Happy Thursday, everyone. It's Nico here with another ThoughtLoad. And today marks the 2-year anniversary of a ThoughtLoad I actually want to talk about today. Now, that was the ThoughtLoad where I talked about thinking outside the box. And I'll link that below or in the description so you can check that out. But what I talked about in that, this is so cool, in that ThoughtLoad 2 years ago was how cities can repurpose office buildings that are being used less to have affordable housing or vertical farms or whatever. And oddly enough, things are happening today. Right now in Manhattan, nearly 18% of the offices are sitting empty as of November. That's equivalent to 30 Empire State Buildings. That's a lot. Now, what they're doing with some of the buildings is converting them into residential housing. That's great. But does that really solve the issue? The rates for these apartments are going to be $3,500 for a 1-bedroom and $7,500 for a 2-bedroom. That kind of rules out most of the freaking country, right? I mean, like, sure, there's tons of people that can afford that, but there's way more people that can't. In the end, I found an unfortunate quote when it was talking about this particular building plan. This guy said, "We're not talking about creating affordable housing. If you want to create affordable housing, then rents are naturally going to be lower. And so the math doesn't typically work out anymore." That's a quote from Van Nieuwerburg. I probably butchered that last name. But that right there is my problem. And that right there is where I wish these people would think bigger. They're only thinking about the standard model that's in place and replicating it to make money. But what if they made money in other ways aside from rent? What if they made money by reducing the expenditures they have on a regular basis for utilities? So if they harvested water, harvested some type of energy through wind, solar, geothermal, whatever it may be, offered employment opportunities to other people, and grew their own food, all right, now it's a different type of system, right? And the offering employment opportunities to underprivileged people now gets that apartment company or that building, that gets them linked up with federal and state funding. When you talk about grants for low-income housing or state or federal funded projects, doing things like that will get you into that money pool. And so, wow, all of a sudden the money looks totally different, doesn't it? When you're not relying on one source of income. But it's funny how it took 2 years for people to figure this out and start moving. Now, one of the things the articles mention here is that the shift to hybrid work has created an inflection point for cities across the country because they're struggling to find out what to do with buildings that are left vacant by workers. Well, I told you in the ThoughtLoad below what to do with that 2 years ago. Those vacant offices could currently be repurposed into 400,000 new apartments. Listen, that's awesome. I feel like giving people a place to live that's up to date and everything like that is super important. People need that. But at least at those rental prices, you're not really going to get a full building. I mean, you might. It's New York, but really? Now, the cool thing is things are not just happening in Manhattan. They're happening all over the country. Same type of thing is happening in San Diego. And most of the vacant office complex that they're repurposing is going to be converted into hotel and residential buildings. Again, that's awesome. But where is that end-to-end type of thinking? Where is the mindset that we not only need to produce something that makes us money, but we need to save as much money in the process and help out people in need. Like, where is that holistic approach? And why can't these people do both? Is it that difficult? Listen, I'm not a financial guru. I've never built an apartment complex or restored one or whatever, but like, why is that not possible? Part of it for me comes from how certain things are set up in society. If people were incentivized to think about that full circle business model, they may do things like this. They may come up with vertical farm solutions for these buildings. They may have a portion of their building be for low income housing or something along those lines. But there's no incentive to do so. The incentive is to make money. And unfortunately, some of the other ideas that I've talked about in these ThoughtLoads and in that ThoughtLoad 2 years ago, that doesn't scream money making for all of these corporate real estate people. But if the incentive was to provide kindness, provide happiness, provide safety, if that's what the incentive was for these people, then I don't know, maybe they might think of that stuff. The sad part is I see that we're making some progress and doing something with these abandoned spaces. But is it really helping people the way that it should? I mean, I personally lived in Nashville for 20 years. I saw them build high rises all over the place. And I even spoke to guys that were doing the construction on these high rises. And I was like, hey, are any of these buildings like totally sold out, or are they being built as vacant and then they're renting them? And they confirmed the latter, right? None of these buildings are totally sold out before they're built. And a lot of them are not full. So why are we spending all of the time, money, and resources on building things that are not going to be used to their fullest potential? And why are we building things that do not help future generations? Guys, we have this technology right now to do vertical farms. We have it right now. We have the technology to put all of the glass windows that you see on the outside of an office building, those can be solar windows that not only reduce the interior temperatures of the office building, but they also generate electricity. We have the technology to have wind power generation on a lot of these office buildings at an industrial scale with no noise or very little noise. All of it's there. We have water collection technology, but we're not using any of it. And all of those things would make it more comfortable to live in that area, reduce the amount of money they're spending on utilities. And, oh, wow, if you're not spending as much on utilities, you can afford to lower the rent. Wow, it's an amazing concept. So I hope some of these people eventually realize what can be done with some of these buildings, and they start implementing a more holistic approach to revamping these abandoned office buildings. Because so far, all I'm seeing with these articles is someone's redoing what someone else was successful in. Someone saw that, some kids recently bought a high school for $100,000 and they remodeled it for apartment buildings. And that's what these guys are doing with the office buildings. They're buying them, repurposing them, and trying to make money. But it's not a long-term solution. In Japan, their business mentality, and I guess their cultural mentality, is to think in 20, 30, and 50-year time windows. Does this fit that model, this revamping of a office building into residential homes? No. Because what does that look like in 50 years? You mean to tell me 50 years from now the rents are going to go down? Hell, in 10 years the rents would be double at this rate. That's not a long-term solution. So even though we're seeing progress and things are getting revamped, remodeled, made newer, whatever, it's very short-minded to me. And I hope all of you see that as well, or at least see that there's something else that could be done to make it more affordable, make it more environmentally friendly, produce food. Like, there's so many other things they could be doing. But I don't know. I'm just a guy with a permaculture certificate and no architectural background. So what do I know? But hey, it's something to think about. Hopefully it gets you thinking. And I hope you check out the initial thought load to see how crazy this is. I'll link the articles as well so you can give those a look. And guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and rest of the day. Until next week for another Thought Load, this is Nico signing off. And as always, begin the duel, win the day.